Hi guys, I'd just like to show you my video for the Crusader. I'm using a two-handed bleed build and let's get into it. I'll show you the stats real quick and the skill perks. So first of all, we're not actually building around the dot. The dot is just what's going to be used to debuff the enemies, and we're going to work off that debuff to give us all the damage increase. Currently I'm just using one support or like beneficial perk, the HP regen, the 500 HP, just to stay alive while I'm in combat in melee, taking all that extra damage. I'm using bonus equal to your deflect value, which is 22%, and I'm using this, which gives me 100% deflect bonus with melee weapons, because a deflect mitigates 100% of the damage that you would be taking from that attack, and it works from melee and ranged attacks. I'm also getting most of my damage from warfare, taking the few bonuses from that. I always make sure that I have 10 in toughness for the HP regen, which also complements the 100% HP regen from that perk. And virtue, I'm not too concerned about right now. I haven't unlocked all the attribute perks because I need to be playing other classes, and right now I've been focusing on the Crusader. Take a look at the skills. The main thing you need for this entire build to work is right here in the damage over time, which causes enemies that are bleeding to be slowed. We don't take any of the dot damage because we are just not concerned about the dot damage at all. We just want the dot to create a slow debuff on the enemy. And then basically we'll go for all of the skills which deal damage to enemies that are slowed. I'm not level 50 yet, so I'm working towards Focus Monocle. As you can see, it's 20% damage with single target skills against enemies that are slowed, shocked, stunned or frozen, and we have a 100% chance to slow enemies because it's a 100% chance to give a bleed on the first attack, so they are instantly going to take these debuffs. Hit points, I've gone in the full tree just for survivability. Everything in this tree benefits playing a melee class. The extra HP, the extra suppression. Just when I get healed, I gain suppression. When I deflect, I gain suppression, because playing a melee class, if you lose suppression, you're just going to get CC chain stunned because there's no diminishing returns. And it's really not nice. But the best perk in this build, which I've also made a guide saying that every class should most probably take, is right here, Field Surgery. It means that no matter what the cooldown duration is on your inoculator, which is effectively your potion, is reduced to 0. As soon as you hit below 25% health, you can use your potion. It basically gives you a what the fuck panic button, which is fantastic, especially in melee if you get into a bad situation, a bad position. Debuffs, I'm not concerned about the effect of slow, how long it lasts, because every second my dots are ticking for 5 seconds from every swing. So I've just gone for the 10% damage bonus on targets affected by slow. And then from close combat, I've taken melee damage, which just explains itself, and the 7% damage to melee skills while in single combat, and the other stance, which gives me 7% damage while in a group of more than 3 opponents. I've taken these perks for crit because first of all, I was taking just everything that was damage to slowed targets. Like here, I had 5% to slowed targets, I had another 5%, another 5%, another 5%, but it was guaranteed sustained damage. But it's really nice to hit those crits. A big crit when you do the execute charge can one-shot enemies, like the tougher enemies. I've got the hasten just for the fact that 20% movement speed while I'm going between characters, charging them down, is what creates fast farming, really. Criticals, I've gone as much crit chance as possible. I've gotten the 5% crit there. I'm not concerned about the damage reduced from it. I've taken that every attack increases crit chance by 1% and it resets when you crit, basically because as of now my crit chance is relatively low. It's 15%. And that's not with gear. My gear does have a few crits. I would say I've got about 25% crit chance. So just having that guarantees that I'm gonna be critting more than I could be. Puritan, I've gone Puritan based just off this. Incoming warp attacks reflect of the attacker. It's fantastic if you're against Psychers when they're doing that channeled beam, or they do the like column of fire, or it actually works on the sort of Chaos Marine Psychers that have the sword. Every attack they do with the sword does 30% damage back to them, so it's quite a damage buff, as well as this, which is a damage mitigation towards the warp damage. I will, when this is unlocked, be going for Holy Conclave for the maximum health and maximum damage. And I will most possibly get in this, depending on the mission, with the 20% health regeneration and 20% suppression regeneration when I kill a demon. If you don't enjoy the crit build, or you don't want to run critical chance, you can go physical. This was an alternate build that I was running before I decided to try crit. And you basically go for the physical damage, the 5% crit damage, the physical damage, and you go all the way up to here to take the 10% damage against bleeding enemies. The reason I spec'd out of this was because this perk right here is currently broken in the... As of right now, of making this video, it doesn't actually do a stacking damage, so... That was quite cost effective. I thought was a bit too much talent points for just the 10% damage on the bleeds. I found I got way more damage from putting it into the crits. The crits were doing way more damage than that was. But yeah, I mean, I haven't gone for anything in movement, just because with the axe, I use this skill. I use between the execute and then between low level mobs, well, not low level, but the weaker mobs, you can execute, which is basically a charge, and then spin, and then you would have the movement buff, run to the next enemy, kill them, and then in 4 seconds you could then charge across the screen to the next enemy. It's very similar to a Raker Bob build. Diablo reference there, no hate please. And yeah, so the build, you would basically just charge to an enemy, hit them. The first strike will always be weaker because you need to hit with the first strike, the single strike, or the spin and blow, which does a 360 degree hit. You need to activate a bleed, and all three abilities here do a bleed, so it can be your single strike, your wide strike, or your spin and blow. Your execute doesn't actually engage a bleed, I just use that for movement and a bit of burst because it hits really hard and it has an extra 10% crit and also ignores armor. I don't really use wide strike unless there's about 3 to 4 enemies grouped up and spin and blows on cooldown, then I'll use wide strike to cleave the enemies. But strike itself is what is a single target tag on it, as well as the bleed and armor breaking. And as we talked through the skills before, everything is bonused from the single target. Here we are, you see single target skills, and when I eventually take this, it'll give it 20% extra damage. I had gone down here and across here and had the every one hit kill restores 10% of max HP, which as it sounds is really good for when you're playing green missions difficulty. But as soon as you start going into yellow or red, if you're doing like impossible turrets, you're not one-shotting enemies, and it requires a one hit kill basically, and it's not gonna happen. But and if you're playing the low difficulty missions, you don't really need that health regen anyway because you don't lose that much health to begin with. The first attack with a single target skill grants 5% crit. I don't feel I need the crit. It's more that I've chose crit over physical attacks because it nets me more damage at the end of the day. So I don't want to waste all those talent points to get 5% crit for just the first attack. But I will be taking the 20% damage because that will be on every attack, because this right here, when you spin or cleave, if the enemies stay alive, the next one will get all the bonuses from the bleeding enemies. So it's quite a good build. I've been running Impossible Tarot on it. As you can see, it's got quite a lot of bonus melee damage. It's a shame that it doesn't actually show like certain stats like extra dot damage or damage to slowed targets, but maybe we'll get there. It's still early days, but if you want to try out a two-handed axe build, this is fantastic. There's one other thing I could say is on my back bar, well, I call it the back bar, my set 2, I've got a one-handed axe and shield. Basically, the one-handed axe benefits from everything the two-handed axe does, but with the extra deflect from a shield and defense stats. As you can see with the shield, my deflect goes to 52%. I can increase that more if I took this talent here, which gives me 50%, which I believe takes me to about 70% deflect chance. So if you're in a group with friends, or you're against a group of enemies which are a bit too tough for you to just charge in and take on with the two-handed axe, then you can just weapon swap, bring out the shield, and you won't be doing as much damage as fast, but you will be able to survive and take a hell of a lot more damage. But yep, that's the build. I hope you enjoy it. It's what I'm currently running. I intend to run it through the event and through the Warzone when it comes. I've had no problems with it. There's a lot of choices that you can take. I mean, the skill trees are huge, but this is what I found best works for me, and if it works for you, let me know. F it out. Thanks very much.